to say, kind of piggybacking off of what Portia was saying, me as a young black male, whenever you hear that in society, based on my generation and how we were brought up, the hip hop, we were brought up around hip hop, and with hip hop music, it could sometimes be a negative connotation because of the stuff that you see in music videos. With me, I'm trying to make it in corporate America. I'm a public relations major, business administration minor. So you will see me sometimes on campus. I have on slacks, a shirt, tie, depending on where I'm going that day. If I have to go to a program or speak somewhere or something. If I'm just going to class, I might have on jeans and a t-shirt. But I'm not trying to dress like they would in those videos because that's not the image that I'm not trying to get there. I'm trying to get to somewhere else. And like, not saying that every young black male does this, but for those like myself who not trying to portray that image, every time that we see another young black male who is trying to execute that image to the T, it's like we drop in our head like, man, why are you doing that? You said in the back, like, we taking 2 steps forward, you taking 3 steps back, like, that's among our own selves that we see that. So sometimes we just sit amongst ourselves and talk and be like, what do other people think about us when they see that?
So part of what you're also describing then is that when you see other black males act in ways that, even if it's perfectly innocent, are going to be misperceived by mainstream whites, you're aware that they're adding to your burden, in a sense.
Right, because when they see, if they see me or the next black male, they're going to say, oh, that's a young black male. They might not know anything about me, just like they might not know anything about the next one. The person, the male that's walking to class, and he may be sagging, but that just might be what he's doing that day. On other days, he might be well put together, but that's why image is so conscious in this society. You have to be conscious of what you're doing and what you have on all the time, because you never know who's watching.
Mm-hmm.
So, and whenever you step out of your 4 walls, you're not representing yourself. Even if you're not aware of it, you're representing something else. So.
Yeah, so there's also well-deserved. Right, and there's a burden you're describing that a white student who dressed and acted the same way might not be perceived the same way. So that there's extra pressure on you, in a sense.
Well, we just actually talked about this in one of my classes, and it really bothers me that it's like this because there was a study done. If a well-dressed white male and a well-dressed black male go across a crosswalk, how many people are going to reach over and lock their car doors? And then they also did a study with a white male that was wearing just a ball cap, t-shirt, and shorts, and the same thing with a black male. And it still proved that the white male in the suit and even the white male in the casual clothes got fewer car locks than the black male. And I hate that we look like that, or we do that in society, because I mean, it's just, like you're saying, like, no matter what, we're just kind of stuck here, I guess. And I don't know, I don't have a solution for that, but it just bothers me that we still do that. And studies with hiring have been done, and it never fails that no matter what, people always view black males as this thug, whatever type of stereotype, and it's just, I don't know. If there was some way to get over that, it would be awesome.
In respect to that, and I see what you're saying, and I feel the exact same way, but I feel that black males, I feel like we may have done that to ourselves. So it's only, we're only trying to overcome it because of what we've done. So we kind of put ourselves behind that eight ball. I wish that it wouldn't happen, but it's something that you got to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned that every little difference that you do to yourself affects not just your personality or who you are, but it changes the image they have for your ethnicity, your race, a woman, man. Like, for example, when some people say Hispanic or Latino, they always think, oh, immigration. Oh, they're immigrants, or they have family members that are immigrants. And you would think that you being in college, it changes the image of yourself, but of your race as well. So you're helping your race by coming to college, or by being proper, or by dressing differently, or just doing something different that your race doesn't do. It changes how people see your race or your ethnicity.
Going along with those comments, it's actually kind of staggering to actually see the commonality in that. But you know, I am a very proud gay man in the community, and I don't always focus that whenever I meet people. But when it is assumed, or whenever that does come, you know, it comes out and I tell people that I am, it's almost like it calls into question my masculinity. When in all reality, I'm sitting at home watching Thundercats and working on art projects, you know? And so it's like, you know, but instantly it turns into, I turn into some girl's purse dog. They're like, oh, you should come shopping with me. And it's like, I go to Goodwill. Like, you know, and it's really funny because I completely agree. There are people in the community that set us back, that make us, you know, and we have to love them all the same, but there are instances in which, you know, people, they openly talk about it. They bash people for being heterosexual, and they make fun of people for not dressing a certain way or not being fashionable, or, oh, well, you know, you're a lesbian or you're gay. You know, it's something in which you're setting yourself back. You're putting the community on spot. So when someone goes, you know, oh, you know, I'm gay, there's that negative connotation of me, you know, partying and doing drugs and being very promiscuous and, you know, not being safe or caring about, you know, other people's beliefs. When in all reality, my main focus is to, be as courteous and kind to other people's beliefs at the same time, because if I don't, and if we don't, it creates this separation between us. And it's the main focus is that, you know, whenever I wake up in the morning, I don't go, you know, oh, good morning, I'm gay. You know, and I don't meet people and go, hi, I'm Colby, I'm also a homosexual. You know, that's not my main focus. And when it comes down to it, it's something in which my masculinity isn't any different. The way I perceive things isn't any different. And but I can see people during the day that, you know, they push this onto people and they make sure that it's this big ordeal. And in all reality, it sets people off. It turns people off. And whenever I can project myself as a normal person and they find out, oh, you're gay, that's not what I want to make the focus of my life. It's just part of who I am. So.
Yeah, and what we're hearing is really important. It's also probably, and I don't mean by in any way that it's trivial or unimportant. We've heard some crucially important and really fascinating things already. But what we've heard so far is probably what we're somewhat more sort of familiar with or comfortable with, especially in diversity settings, which is the ways that racial, ethnic, and sexual minorities are stereotyped and misperceived, and kind of the individuality of who each of you are not noticed. And all in all, because our continuing divisions are not completely equal or symmetrical. Some people still are favored by a whole host of aspects of the way our society is organized. These are the misperceptions that we, of course, most need to be aware of and to pay attention to, what we've heard so far. But let's take it a little bit further, because middle-class whites and heterosexuals, and here already I'm mentioning now two different groups that cut across our panel. Not all of you fit into only one of those categories. Some of you fit into two of those categories. Those supposedly more mainstream groups in our society, they're not necessarily mainstream in reality, but they're mainstream in the power structure, so to speak. Those groups also encounter stereotypes, encounter expectations of you. What are some of those stereotypes that you encounter? Those of you who are white, those of you who are heterosexual.
The only one.
Well, even if you're the only one who fits both categories, for example, all three white students on the panel you walk around bearing your whiteness. And when you are interacting with students of color, they're making assumptions about you, just the way they feel you're making assumptions about them. What are those assumptions? What do you wish they would see about you?
Well, I guess the hard part for me answering this is I try my hardest not to make any assumptions at all. The thing that I try to do is simply stop caring about all the millions of differences, because I know I'm going to get something wrong if I make an assumption. And I guess that's one of the things that would answer it is I don't try to make assumptions about people. I don't try to care to fit the white, heterosexual, Christian mold. I'm completely indifferent to so many of the aspects that entails that I just throw it off.
Right, but what we've heard from some of the students who have spoken, the students of color, they also don't fit the mold. They don't fit the stereotype. They're very different from the way they are often perceived, and that's what they're trying to alert us to, that we shouldn't see them through the filter of the stereotype. But you're all aware that people do. You've been describing how you know, even though you're an individual, for one thing, and even though in certain ways you're quite different from the stereotype people hold, nonetheless, as you walk into a room, people still are having assumptions about you, often wrong assumptions. What are the wrong assumptions that the white students on the panel feel are made about them? What do you wish other students of color would recognize about you that they might first just categorize you as white?
I think this is actually starting to die. I think the main problem with that, or the main thing that I would wish them not to, is that I'm a very open and outgoing person. And a lot of this, the white boy who can't dance, who can't do anything, who is nerdy and can't do anything, I hate it when I'm thrown into that specific little category, because I do love to go out and party and have fun with my friends and everything, and I'm generally the one that gets everyone up and dancing and doing things. I'm generally the first one out on the floor making fun of myself.
But there's the expectation you won't be.
Yeah, there's an expectation that I will just sit there and be awkward and can't do anything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if we sort of like continue this part of it, because part of where I want to go with this, part of what my book was about, part of what I think we need to do if we're going to reach a kind of deeper level of comfort with each other, is to first acknowledge and be aware of the ways that we do, almost inevitably, because we've been socialized in a society that's kind of soaked in stereotypes. You know, we swim in a sea of stereotypes, and we have to drink that water. You know, we can't be free of it. None of us are free of it. But we can, I think, do two things. One is we can be more aware of it and listen to each other and hear about how people, as we've been hearing this morning, you know, if we'll say, if I look at myself, and if you look at me honestly, you'll see I don't fit the stereotype. And that doesn't mean even rejecting all aspects of it, because I think, Kelton, you were sort of implying also, importantly, that you don't want to have to just be what the corporate types want you to look like. You really want to reach a point where you can dress the way you're comfortable with and act the way you're comfortable, not have to act the way somebody else does, but have your real qualities still seen. So we need to kind of be able to hear all that. But the part of what we get locked into, I think, is that the stereotyping, and this is the harder thing to talk about, and I think maybe another part of why people said I was brave writing the book, because when I asked people some about that, what sort of became clear was what they felt made me brave writing the book was that I was a white person writing about race. That they wouldn't as much feel that an African American writing about race needed to be brave. Because in a way, African Americans and other minorities actually have a voice granted to them to, as much as there is clearly still the oppression goes in the other direction, you know, the privileges still go to whites, to middle-class people, to heterosexuals, there's no question. But the right to talk about the problems belongs to the people who are perceived as having the problem. And so for a white person to talk about it, you know, one of the things that sort of would come up in the discussions I would have as I asked people, why do you think I have to be brave to write about it? What really became clear was that they were picturing, whether they were white or whether they were black, they were picturing racism as a kind of one-way street, prejudice and stereotyping as a one-way street. And what got left out is that how we get really uncomfortable with each other is that part of the experiences can't be talked about. So what I want us to be able to see is how we each give out cues to each other. If you pick up, even if it's not stated, that you're not going to be fun at a party. You know, you may have the strength of character to go and be fun anyhow, just the way Portia has the strength of character to go and succeed anyhow. But many of her friends sort of don't fight it through to that point because it's hard, because when you're stereotyped, you can't be yourself. And when that happens, we sort of give out cues to each other and we make each other uncomfortable and we back off just a little bit. And all it takes is that little bit of backing off to make stereotypes become more powerful. Because the more we know somebody intimately as a human being, the harder it is to see them through a filter. But the more we kind of back off, even just a little bit, even being politely respectful, but sort of not really sort of, the way Portia was describing just how students in the class choose, without even thinking about it, who they're talking to as they come into the class and as they come out of the class, who's the people they associate with, when it would really be the most natural thing, if you got to know each other, for the smartest kids in the class to be the ones who wanted to talk to Portia, because she's one of the students who's doing best. But it doesn't happen that way as naturally because we see each other through filters. And we see each other through filters because we make each other uncomfortable in subtle ways. Even people of goodwill, even people who are very open-minded, step back just a little bit because there's a little bit of pain that we can potentially anticipate in the interactions. And we've heard a lot about that from the people on the panel who represent minority positions. Let's hear a little bit about the other side, including Colby, for example, your experience apart from sexual orientation of being a white person, which you also are. And Allison, your experience of being a white person who, wants to be very socially enlightened, wants to not perceive people by category, but you're perceived by category, as we all are. What is it like? What's the kinds of experiences you've had that you kind of don't feel even you have a right to talk about because, people of color have it worse, so who are you to complain? But what are the things you wish you could say?
I guess I'm a little bit different. My dad is actually Hispanic, but I've grown up in Arkansas with my single mom and now my stepdad. So I've grown up with white parents, and I guess for me, I wouldn't say it's easier to see both sides, but I can see a little bit into my dad's life and everything. As far as what I would like to say, I don't know. I think, and I may not be answering your question, but something that's just popped into my mind was just everybody has their own experiences that are unique to that individual. Like for me growing up, I know that's obvious, but for me growing up like with a single mother and stuff like that, like maybe that was my struggle, and maybe I had hardships growing up, and we were really poor. I still remember the first time I got the cute folder for school supplies, like it had a cat on it, and I was so excited. But for me, like, I don't know, I guess for me, now that I've grown up really poor, and now that my mom has remarried and I have a better lifestyle, I guess I don't want people to think that I don't appreciate what I have, because I really do. I guess a lot of people will look at me and say that since my stepfather is military and we live in a nice house and we have nice things or whatever, I still drive a hand-me-down car and everything. Like, I'm not this overprivileged white person that I think some people think I might be. Some people have said to me, well, Allison, you have this handed to you and you have this handed to you, but I still work. I'm an RA, and that's not a hard job, but I have done my fair share of food service and everything, and I don't know. I just think we all have our own struggles, and it's easy to look past those and say that you pass somebody on the sidewalk and you think, well, they have a lot better than I do, and it's easier to put ourselves down. I guess. I don't really think I'm answering your question, but that's just what's been going through my mind as you're talking about all of this stuff. So.
I feel like, because I have had a few classes, especially I had a philosophy class last semester where the classroom was predominantly African-American students. And I found myself having a really hard time breaking into the kind of circle, because it happens the same way on different races. If there's a room full of white people, and an African-American person comes in, everyone's gonna push you to the side. And I found it really hard because they thought I was, like she said, this privileged white kid that didn't know anything about hard times or struggles. And in all reality, I grew up with my mom for the first 12 years of us being, my mom, a single mom. We lived in a small trailer. She worked 2 jobs to be able to pay my tuition when I went to a private school, and then when I went to a normal school, and she still had to work 2 jobs to make everything work out. And over time, you understand certain struggles, and people perceive you as not knowing what struggles are and not knowing what issues are, and attaching being gay onto it. There are struggles that I face every day of being like, oh, you're not as much of a person as someone else, or you don't know what struggles are, you don't know what these things are. And so I understand like where it's coming from, but instantly being perceived, I'm that privileged white kid, and in all reality, like she said, I'm a broke college student. I eat ramen noodles pretty much every day, and it's like, I have to work to get to some of the things that I have, and I have had certain things given to me, but it's not like I don't appreciate those things that I've gotten, because I've gone without, and I've done without, and I don't want to be perceived as being a snob to people. I want to be able to be as friendly and as vibrant as possible, because I know that we all go through different struggles, and we all have different aspects of our life that we've experienced, and that makes us who we are. And I feel like if we don't give each other that chance, that whenever I walk into a room and there's a bunch of African American people, my first thing is I think there's no way. Like, I have to start from the ground up and work all the way up. And I know it feels the same way in the opposite end. But you wonder, how am I being perceived? What am I being looked at? Because it's not as in, I don't, socially do the same things, or, we don't do listen to the same music or watch the same television shows, or, have the same family experiences. But in all reality, they're so close, and it's just hard to feel like we are that close because of all the problems and the issues that have happened in the past that we're trying to work through. And I guess that kind of goes with my idea earlier with the complacency, is that's our complacency level, is when we first meet people, we think, oh, well, they're in this box. Mm-hmm. And if we can't break away from that and understand that we've all gone through different struggles and just learn about each other first, then we don't perceive in anything.
Well, one of the things that all of you poor college students, to use Colby's phrase, have in common is you have to get to your next class. So I don't want to keep us beyond the time that we were scheduled. I just want to really thank all of you for your participation, for the insights and experiences you've shared with us. And I won't be around to check on whether anybody follows up on this, but I would like to suggest here you are, a group of 7 students who have just been through something rather intimate together and have shared a lot. I think the adjective brave really belongs much more with you guys than with me. I was just sitting alone writing a book, in the privacy of my home. You're right here with everybody listening and watching. You've been through this really quite special experience together. We're talking about how these barriers get broken down by really knowing people. So I want to invite you in a totally inappropriate way, because I don't know your lives, how you fit, where you are, and I won't be able to check on it, but I want to invite the 7 of you to try to keep this dialogue going, to try to get together with each other, because you've now been through something that makes you a group that's different from other groups. There's another group identity that you have, sharing this experience. So if I had my druthers, you guys would keep this going and take it where we haven't yet taken it today. So thank all of you for being with us.